Okay, that should work. All right. Welcome to the object storage working group synchronous meeting. This is the Americas meeting. We haven't had one in 2 weeks, I think. The last one was async, and the one before we skipped, there would have not have been enough attendance. So let me share my screen here, and we can go through today's agenda. There's, I think, quite a few things we can talk about today. All right. I assume you can see my screen, so I'm just going to start with the first item. I thought that's maybe something we wanted to talk about sooner than later because we had, I see Marine is already responding. So basically we had pushed the date back. Originally the working group was supposed to wrap up, I think, end of January, and we had pushed it back to the end of March. But with Alessio still out until early next month, I believe, or at least end of this month, I think we should probably push it back. Yeah, because it would be a bit abrupt. It would at least be good to kind of debrief with Alessio and like see kind of what's next and what his thoughts are. I'm not sure what the extension should be. Like, I don't know if there's any opinions on this. So I thought maybe we can just look at what we have accomplished so far, what we may want to accomplish, or if we need to again maybe pull back ambitions a little bit more. So any thoughts on this? Marie, do you want to say something about it?
Yeah, I think we still are finding new things, and we are still looking to consolidate some of the knowledge that we accumulated over the period of the working group. So until we have at minimum that resolved together with some of the other items that will be popping up soon, I don't think we should be closing this down. The item that I want to achieve, at least from my side, at the end of this working group, is that we have a clear idea of where all the challenges are in this specific topic, so that we can work on resolving some of them in a timely manner rather than when it becomes a problem of a larger scale. Although there's something to be said about the fact that some of these items are already a challenge that we need to resolve. So I think we should definitely extend until we kind of run out of knowledge to share, which is not the case yet.
Yes, I completely agree with this. It would feel very anticlimactic if we would stop now, because, like you said, we're still working through some of the kind of fundamental stuff. I know I do. Still wrestling with that. We haven't written everything down, so I think that is something I definitely want to do, or what we should do. And another item I thought I really started to think more about, but I would definitely help with from inside or outside the group is, and that's maybe a good. Oh yeah, thanks by the way for mentioning 1st of May. Sounds reasonable. I think especially around the documentation bits, I think we can like easily get done the next couple of weeks. And so to talk about the next item actually, which I would love to get done as well as part of the working group, is what we had called kind of, I forgot who brought it up. I think it might have been you, Marine, actually. Like, what are the kind of guardrails we can put in place? Because what has kind of gotten clearer to me, like while I have been looking at how not just object storage, but like how uploads in general work currently in GitLab, is that it is still, it would be very unclear to me still as a developer, out of all these options that we offer for how uploads can be implemented, both from a developer point of view, but also from an admin point of view, because we have like a couple switches that relates primarily to object storage. Like, is this something where we can look to reduce complexity maybe? It feels almost like we've kind of built ourselves a very large castle here with like a lot of, interesting settings, and that induces a lot of complexity in the code base, a lot of different combinations of how things can operate. So I'm wondering, do we even want to, or do we need to support all of this going forward? Because if we don't, if there's like room here for simplification, I think that would be a great next step to focus on, because it is also work to understand it all and document it all, right? Yeah, so that is something I would love to get a clearer idea about. And I listed 3 very specific things that I am still kind of confused about, and I'm not sure if we have the right people here or who might know these things, but and we don't have to talk about them in detail. I'm just going to quickly touch on them. The first one was, and I created a separate issue for this, is, and I think that was the first thing we started originally to kind of bake into Workhorse as an optimization, is what we refer to as disk buffering, where we we go down the default route in Workhorse. So there's no explicit handling in that sense in terms of routing a particular upload request. And we basically rewrite a multi-part form request that comes in as an upload to cache these files to disk in Workhorse, and then we hand that request off to Rails, and Rails basically can already work with these files rather than doing that itself, which would be more expensive. So I'm wondering, like, is this something we still need? I mean, I completely understand like why this was put in place in the first place, but if there's an option to replace this with direct upload, say, everywhere, and I don't know if that is, but I wonder if we should even still have this.
I can make a few comments about that.
Yeah, please go ahead.
The reason we have it is because I was building fun stuff in Workhorse, and there's a rec middleware if you use plain Rails, where if a request comes in that has a multi-part file in it, that middleware will pull out the file and store it into a temp file and delete it at the end of the request. That is a functionality of rec. And very early on in the history of Workhorse, I think was me, added the capability for Workhorse to do this. So Workhorse pulls out all the multi-part files and puts them in temp files. And the idea was then you don't have a Ruby process writing files to disk, even though Nginx is in front of it and it's already buffered, so it's relatively fast. It was meant as a efficiency thing. And this had nothing to do with object storage or uploads. Well, it had to do with uploads, but nothing to do with object storage. Right. So that existed, and it still exists. And we relied on it. Well, it sort of became, that's why it's there. It would be really nice to remove it, but there is one problem, which is that we have so many buckets and we don't know where we need to upload things. And this thing makes it possible for some things where we don't know where to upload them to just put them in a temporary directory, and then the Rails controller decides where to upload them. I think GraphQL is one area where this plays up. So if we would replace it with direct upload, we would either need to know for everything to what bucket it goes, or we could say we have some sort of bucket for temporary uploads, and then Workhorse uploads into the temporary bucket, and the Rails controller downloads from the temporary bucket and uploads to the correct bucket. So this would really be helped by having a single bucket for everything.
Got it.
Which is maybe, I think, one of our goals, but that's kind of
we don't have it yet.
We don't have it yet, and that's one of the harder things to build.
Can I ask one question though? Thanks as well for the history behind it. So Rails eventually does know though where to upload it, right? But
yeah.
So why can't we replace it, this mechanism, in the same way we already do that for a bunch of other requests that actually have an explicit route in Workhorse, where we go through this handshake where we first authorize with Rails, and then Rails responds, telling Workhorse, hey, here is a URL, for instance, like where this file needs to live. Then still Workhorse has no knowledge of where it needs to upload. It just gets a URL handed back, right? So basically what I guess what I'm suggesting is, we, GitLab, should know what kind of uploads we need to support, right? Can we, until we have maybe a more uniform mechanism, just add an explicit route for all of these, which might be noisy in the beginning, but at least it would be consistent, and reduce the code paths to just one. And then we can maybe talk about condensing this into, maybe they don't all need like a separate authorization endpoint and all of that, right? That's kind of what David is still looking at. But that's basically what I'm suggesting. I'm just looking to, we have this like massive matrix of ways an upload can take, both in Workhorse, but also in Rails. So if you multiply all of these out, it just you get to this staggering complexity. And I think we need to look for ways to reduce that.
You don't have to convince me of that, but I think for this particular one, we have to do a lot of work up front to make this work. And if we end up, well, because we need to find all the routes, we need to map all the routes to write good regexes for them. We could just do a pre-authorized request on every post. Well, we could, but that would double the number of posts that Rails has to handle. So it sort of takes us into a long tail of work that is hard to predict. And if we build a single bucket solution, then we don't need this. We don't need to have an explicit route for every multi-part MIME file thing, because you can just put it all in the same bucket.
Mm-hmm. Yeah,
so
that's
I'm not. I'm all for getting rid of all these weird flags like direct upload or proxy download, or it's scary. But this particular one, I'm not sure. It might be relatively much work. Like with,
okay, that's good.
Yeah.
No, that's good to know. And I'm not saying this is necessarily the first one we need to do. It's just something I did notice. And I mean, this is actually exactly the kind of feedback I was hoping to get, because it's really hard even to understand at this point what are the trade-offs here.
A question for both of you, actually, or everyone who knows. Is there a list of features that are using this specific path?
I think there's a spreadsheet somewhere that we have a list of things that get uploaded.
So so the reason why I'm asking for this is, I wonder whether we can like stop the problem from expanding further by knowing the items that we currently have. And let's say, I don't know, sorry, it has been a long day, so I'm going to use some direct words. Decree, right? Like communicate outwards that this is no longer an option. Like you cannot be adding any features that depend on this. And we could even maybe fail tests if someone tries to do this. And that way, at least we kind of stop from expanding further with not that much effort.
I think to make that succeed, you also need to give people an alternative.
That's true.
And
which brings us to point later. But you're right. That's a good call out.
Yeah, I guess this is what I'm still struggling with, is what is the recommendation even? Like if I'm looking to add a new upload, what should I be doing? It's like not clear to me right now. And this kind of I don't think I've had it. I think I had it linked in maybe a previous sync. I think it might not even be possible at all times to use, for instance, direct upload. There was one team that was adding, I forgot what it was, but they were, I think they were looking to encrypt files before they, not at rest, but before they upload them to object storage. And they were relying, I believe, on a Ruby gem to do that. So I think the reasoning then was, well, we can't use direct upload because we would have Workhorse, do that, and it doesn't do that right now. So that's why they kind of moved down like a legacy path, or whatever we want to call it. Yeah, it's like I don't know. There might be other reasons, right? Why this just doesn't work. So yeah, what Jacob said, we need to give them. We need to have also a good alternative. We prevent people from using something.
Well, I think we need to know where we're going if we start doing cleanup. And With some things, I think it's easier to say like we definitely don't want this, but with other things, it depends on what we end up building as the new thing. In the case of those encrypted, I think those are Terraform state files.
Terraform state, yes.
Yeah. I don't know everything. I just read. I was just reading through the requirements issue. Otherwise, I wouldn't even know what I'm talking about. It's fresh in my mind. The Terraform state files. What we could imagine is, because those have a specific route, is that they get a workhorse route that says, "Don't touch these," and then they just go into Puma, and Puma does whatever it wants, and then they can do an upload from Puma. Because I don't think we're going to live in a world where all uploads are done by things other than workhorse will put objects into object storage, because there's things, psychic jobs that need to pull and push files from object storage. So it's a Rails controller can decide on its own, I'm putting a thing into object storage. So then the particular use case.
Is that something we want still to be the case?
Depends on how big these files are. If they're reasonably small, then I don't see a problem with that.
But what would be the drawback of just always using direct upload? I mean, is there any obvious drawback? I mean, even if it's a small file, just to reduce
in this case, we have this encryption stuff, and
right. Okay.
The feature wanting control of when the file gets encrypted.
Well, let's assume we had support for encryption in Workhorse. So outside of this one issue, are there any other reasons we can think of why wouldn't we just use direct upload everywhere?
Well, the problem with direct upload is that you need to know where the upload is going.
Well, Rails knows that, right? So that's why we call the authorize endpoint. It will tell us.
Yeah, most of the time we do want direct upload, but I don't think this Terraform state file thing means we can't have direct upload for everything else. This is not the disk buffering. One of the problems with disk buffering is that we need to do a handoff from Workhorse to Rails. But if Workhorse doesn't even touch this multi-part MIME thing, then it doesn't go to disk. So it doesn't matter if Workhorse and Rails are on the same machine or not.
Yeah, sorry, I was jumping around a bit as well. My last comment was not related to disk buffering at all. I was kind of going to the next one as well, sort of already, because there was item, the Roman numeral 2 here, which was you can actually also disable direct upload in the settings, which I was like dimly aware of before. But I was also wondering, like, why? why would you allow users to like bypass this, when it sounded to me like the evolution so far has been, we first came up with disk buffering, which was like an immediate improvement. It was kind of this like one size fits all. Let's just make uploads faster, right? In general, outside of object storage. And I guess then the next bit was, well, now we have object storage, so files can live.
I wouldn't go that way, Matthias. Not because there is no logic behind what you're saying. There is some. The thing is, no one sat down and said, let's figure out a storage story.
Things just happen. And I think a lot of these flags are there because we made incremental changes and we never cleaned them up.
Yeah.
But that's not what I mean, because what I'm trying to say is, to me, it sounds like the way a file is uploaded is very much an implementation detail. Maybe I'm looking at it wrong, but it sounds to me like if I'm a user, I don't care how a file is uploaded. I have a file and I want it to end up being in object storage or in a local storage.
The setting shouldn't exist. No, but it probably exists.
Why does it exist?
For rollout reasons, probably.
Yeah, so you have rollout reasons. You also have knowledge as well at that time, right? Like you have parts of the code base that people are unaware of, don't know how to use, and so on and so on. Don't forget, we grew as a company, we grew as an application as well. So things were added with the best intentions to resolve a certain issue. Whether we had the knowledge to resolve it in one way or another is also a question. So it's not like someone sat down and did a scope out of the whole code base to understand how these would bolt together the best. It's more, we have this right now in front of us, let's resolve this issue and see how we can safely roll it out.
So it's more like a feature toggle kind of.
Pretty much.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's my assumption, at least from what I recall in some of these items.
Okay, got it.
It also goes for some of the others, like background uploads.
Yep.
We had to put everything, make a big change and start putting everything into object storage. And sometimes that just meant, well, we just do the regular carrier way thing, and then we say, oops, it's it's not an object storage. Let's create a cyclic job that puts it in object storage after all. And that was the fastest to build at the time. Direct upload was hard to implement, and Alessio would know better because he was more involved. But some things just got built without direct upload, without having to touch Workhorse. Workhorse was in a separate repo. Adding Workhorse roots is a pain. Doing Workhorse development, it's still a pain, but it's less of a pain now that it's in the same repo. And just spawning a cyclic job was, for some things, just a faster way to get it working.
All right, got it. Okay, so it's basically a similar reason, right? It was so it's more like is it then can I think of this more as, because it sounds to me like that it's very much a developer story you're telling, but these are user-facing switches, right? If I'm an admin and I run GitLab, how do I make this decision to turn on?
Yeah, no, it's terrible.
Upload or not?
They shouldn't be there.
Okay.
But when you're a developer and you're deploying your code, you need to control your code in production. Right. And also, we didn't.
Okay, got it. That explains a lot, though, because I kind of misunderstood these as they exist for the sole purpose of admins, basically.
They're probably all feature flags.
Yeah.
I'm not even sure if we had feature or how extensively we were using feature flags at the time. And sometimes you have things that you can't feature flag because of how the application boots. Yep. Like if you do things in an initializer, then
yeah, and Workhorse also doesn't have feature flags anyway, right?
Yeah, just again, keep in mind, like feature flags are also relatively recent thing compared to some of these items as well. So it's again one of those things where tools were used to the best of the knowledge of the developer and product lead who needed to accomplish a user-facing feature, not exactly how they did it, right? Like they needed to do it as safely and as fast as possible to accomplish a certain goal. Now that we want to consolidate some of these things because operationally it's actually really hard to support this, we are like running against all these stories. So it's not a linear story, so to speak, right? Like it's a lot of really good engineers doing what was best for that moment in time.
Yep, got it. All right.
But I do want to not expand more about like whether background uploads and so on like need to be the things that we support. It's more, I really want to understand, like, if we consolidate or we say that we want to use one thing, what would that one thing out of the things we currently have be? Like, what would we support? Would that be direct upload?
The thing, whatever we use on GitLab.com right now is the right thing. Sorry, that was
that's actually a good call out. At the same time, I'm thinking, how would I figure out? Because all of these flags and switches are enabled and disabled and in certain order over a period of time.
Do we have usage, like the usage ping? Would it tell us if Omnibus customers would have these flags enabled or disabled? I wonder.
I think we would have to look at them case by case and make a case for removing them and what the default should be, and trying to understand what the impact is. But it's hard to make general statements without looking at them, really looking at them individually and what it changes.
Yeah, I'm pretty sure, not 100% confident, but as I started to look into, I'm not confident at all about anything I'm saying here, but like when I started to look at the Rails implementation yesterday, it seemed to me that direct upload and this background uploads switch, or these two switches, are mutually exclusive, or direct upload, when it is enabled, overrides background uploads. That would suggest that all of these code paths that support background uploads wouldn't be enabled for SaaS.
No,
what
they
I
cannot be.
Here
Go ahead, Jason.
The way that everything works when it operates in a cloud native fashion, background uploads do not work, period. They're gone. They don't exist when it comes to SaaS, when it comes to cloud native. And that has been from the get-go, because you cannot share the file systems. So that functionality is
well, we used to have NFS servers. some of the last NFS servers we turned off was because of this.
Yeah,
But-
that was something I was unclear of.
But-
So NFS is not a thing at all anymore in production. Okay, got it.
So the way it's designed in Cloud Native was intentionally to break that off. From day one, we went, do not use NFS, go away. Okay. That's what I'm trying to make clear. And now we not only don't recommend NFS because of what it does to the overall application at load, and two, we ended up, sorry, I was trying to turn off that raised hand bit. The application is now designed in such a way that you really don't want to be writing files to disk ever, right? You want them to be entirely stateless. You don't want to have to worry about these things. Direct upload, where available, should be used because you're not storing it to some temporary file that may end up at one of 900 instances of Workhorse. Okay, that's the problem with ever stashing things to disk. If one part of a request goes over there, where does the other 15 parts go? Right? We don't know necessarily. When it comes to the way things should work in Cloud Native, we should look at GitLab.com as an example because it's driven a lot of some of these decisions. But it also comes down to we need to be careful the difference between when we say a user just uploads something and what an admin actually has to deal with how the environment actually operates.
Got it. Okay. No, this is really good to know. That was certainly not clear to me. I knew that the general direction was direct upload, but to what extent or whether there's still some kind of mixture being used, I wasn't totally clear on that. So that's good to know. So this basically, yeah, to kind of reverse that, what we're saying is background uploads, if at all, are used by Omnibus users, correct?
Yeah, because background uploads presume that there's a shared file system between a Rails controller and a Psychic process,
Right.
which cannot happen in Cloud Native.
Right. Okay.
That's not the same thing as the disk buffering because in Cloud Native, the Workhorse pod, the Workhorse container and the Rails container are co-located. So they do see the same file system.
I think we might be too late for this with 15.0, but wouldn't be a simple first step to just set ourselves kind of a due date and say, because we know direct upload is working because it's working on says, could we just announce, like deprecate background uploads and announce it like we have this 3 month or 3 milestone deprecation process, right? So that we let Omnibus users know if you have this enabled, do not enable it, like enable direct upload.
Oh, okay. Matthias, I think you're conflating removal with deprecation. We can announce deprecation right now and carry it as long as we want, right? We can not as long, like we need to set a due date, but the due date doesn't need to be 15.0. In 15.0, we would be removing it if we were ready to remove it. What we can do is prepare to actually announce, right? Set the deprecation somewhere so that people get the announcement and that announcement carries on through the blog post, through all the various channels. So if you want to do that, we can do that without rushing towards the 15.0. I want to avoid that at all costs.
But we may not even need to tell the users because it could be that direct upload works everywhere. So we can just always do direct upload and not tell anybody.
I need to drop out, but I would wanna leave one item because I remember this conversation, like deja vu started like screaming at me all of a sudden. We talked about this already. We talked about direct upload being enabled as the default item. And I have an issue for this. I don't recall this being mentioned. Doesn't mean that it wasn't, but I'm just leaving it here. Direct upload on is the issue here. And there has been a bit of a back and forth in that issue. Would be useful to actually consume that issue and see what comes out of it. Again, keep in mind that this is, my God, 3 years ago, March 14th, 2019. So
and it's still open.
Things have changed since then, of course, but it's good to understand some of the context of why that was not the case back then, apart from no one actually went and did it.
Excellent. Thank you for sharing this. This will be interesting.
Right. Thanks for the great discussion. I need to drop off.
Yeah. Thanks, Marine. Yeah, I noticed we're running against time, so that's probably not enough time to talk about the other points, but this was already very, very helpful. Thanks everyone for Jason is still okay, yeah, right. You brought this up in the Slack channel as well. Maybe we can just push the remaining items to next week if that's okay with everyone. I'll wrap it up here. All right, sounds good. Thank you everyone for joining, and catch up async. Bye bye.